Well, hello again. I'm not terribly well lit today. Not that it matters really, this is not Hollywood, sadly. It's a bit overcast, you can probably hear it's drizzling a bit in the background. Now, I didn't make a video last week because there wasn't much to report on. I saw some pathetic nonsense from Steve Bassett, who sees validation for Roswell at every turn. He showed something that a senator said, and he said, well, that validates Roswell. And I looked at it and I thought, no, it doesn't. How does that validate Roswell? But that's what Bassett sees at every turn, is validation for Roswell. And I saw Danny Sheehan again, alien-human hybrids. Complete nonsense, of course. Be no point whatsoever in creating hybrids. The aliens would end up with a species that hated them just as much as they hate us. Just be someone else to fight. Complete rubbish. Okay, now I'm going to read here a statement. Now this is from Mac Brazel. Now you may recall that the Roswell wreckage was found on Mac Brazel's ranch. He found it on June the 14th, nothing to do with July the 7th. There is no validation for the crash at Roswell being ET related, none whatsoever. Now, I'll read this out briefly, hopefully. Interview with Mac Brazel. Roswell Daily Chronicle, July 9th, 1947. So remember, July the 7th was when Brazel told him all about it, but he actually found it on his ranch 3 weeks previously on June the 14th. W.W. Brazel, age 48, Lincoln County rancher living 30 miles southeast of Corona, today told his story of finding what the Army at first described as a flying disc. But the publicity which attended his find caused him to add that if he ever found anything short of a bomb, he sure wasn't going to say anything about it. Brazel was brought here late yesterday by W.E. Whitmore of radio station KGFL. Had his picture taken and gave an interview to the Record, and Jason Callahan sent here from the Albuquerque Bureau of the Associated Press to cover the story. The picture he posed for was sent out over the AP telephoto wire sending machine specially set up in the Record office by R.D. Adair, AP wire chief sent here for the sole purpose of getting out the picture, and that of Sheriff George Wilcox, to whom Brazel originally gave the information of his find. Okay, now bear in mind, you know, they've got to use a telephoto wire sending machine because this is 1947. There was no internet. You couldn't just send someone some pictures. Brazel related that on June the 14th, he and 8-year-old son Vernon were about 7 or 8 miles from the ranch house of the J.B. Foster Ranch, which he operates, when they came upon a large area of bright wreckage made up of rubber strips, tin foil, a rather tough paper and sticks. I thought it was balsa wood as well. Where did I get that from? At the time, Brazel was in a hurry to get his round made and did not pay much attention to it. But he did remark about what he had seen, and on July 4th, he, his wife Vernon and daughter Betty, age 14, went back to the spot and gathered up quite a bit of the debris. So Mac Brazel was returned with his wife and his son and daughter to collect some of the debris. The next day, he first heard about the flying discs, and he wondered if what he had found might be the remnants of one of these. There was a reward. I think it was $10,000 reward or something for a flying disc. Monday, he came to town to sell some wool, and while here, he went to see Sheriff George Wilcox and whispered kind of confidential like that he might have found a flying disc. So you can see how these stories get embellished and exaggerated over time. Wilcox probably went, he's found a flying disc! And the reporters get straight onto it, you know. Wilcox got in touch with the Roswell Army Airfield, and Major Jesse A. Marcel and a man in plain clothes accompanied him home, while they picked up the rest of the pieces of the disc and went to his home, that's in quote marks by the way, disc, and went to his home to try to reconstruct it. According to Brazel, they simply could not reconstruct it at all. They tried to make a kite out of it, but could not do that and could not find any way to put it back together so that it would fit. Then Major Marcel brought it to Roswell, and that was the last he heard of it until the story broke that he had found a flying disc. Brazel said that he did not see it fall from the sky, did not see it before it was torn up, so he did not know the size or shape it might have been. But he thought it might have been about as large as a tabletop. The balloon which held it up, if that was how it worked, must have been about 12 feet long, he felt, measuring the distance by the size of the room in which he sat. The rubber was smoky grey in colour and scattered over an area of about 200 yards in diameter. When the debris was gathered up, the tin foil, paper, tape and sticks made a bundle about 3 feet long and 7 or 8 inches thick, while the rubber made a bundle about 18 or 20 inches long and about 8 inches thick. In all, he estimated the entire lot would have weighed about 5 pounds. Is this sounding much like an alien spacecraft to you? It certainly doesn't sound like one to me. There was no sign of any metal in the area which might have been used for an engine, and no sign of any propellers of any kind, although at least one paper fin had been glued onto some of the tin foil. There were no words to be found anywhere on the instrument, although there were letters on some of the parts. Considerable Scotch tape and some tape with flowers printed upon it had been used in the construction. Scotch tape, tin foil, balsa wood, rubber strips. That's what Mac Brazel, the guy that found the Roswell wreckage, found. And Stephen Bassett is saying, this validates Roswell, that validates Roswell. That is a statement from the guy that actually found it and gathered up the wreckage. It's not an alien spacecraft, is it? Oh, there's a bit on the other side I forgot to read. No strings of wire were to be found, but there were some eyelets in the paper to indicate that some sort of attachment may have been used. Brazel said he had previously found 2 weather balloons on the ranch, but what he found this time did not in any way resemble either of these. Mogul balloon is a different instrument. Different balloon, different instrument package. And the components that he described are indeed the components used in a Mogul balloon string. Project Mogul. I'm sure what I found was not any weather observation balloon, he said, but if I find anything else beside a bomb, they're going to have a hard time getting me to say anything about it. So that's a statement from Mac Brazel, who found the Roswell wreckage, and I think we can agree it's not an alien spacecraft, is it? So Steve Bassett was going on for nearly 2 hours. Oh, this is validation for Roswell. We know they're here. No. No. If you're telling us they're here, Mr. Bassett, prove it. Show us some tangible evidence. Prove it. That's all I'm saying. Just prove it. So that was Steve Bassett talking about Roswell, complete nonsense. Danny Sheehan, I've said it before, put a line through anything Danny Sheehan has to say. It's complete and utter rubbish. Alien hybrids, you know, if there's an alien hybrid, present one, you know. Present some evidence that there are alien hybrids. If you want me to believe it, prove it. Usual professional standard of production. Anyway, I don't know whether this was a joke or not, but Bob Lazar is making a movie. It's called Gravitor. I think this is this might have been a spoof thing. I don't think Bob Lazar would want to be examined closely enough to make any kind of movie. He's certainly not going to present it to Arrow. He's not going to present himself to Arrow because he knows that he'll be found out to be a fraud very quickly. Oh yeah, so what Danny Sheehan said was, what actually said was, alien human hybrids are real, and he has seen evidence of this that would convince any jury. So why aren't we seeing this evidence? Why don't you try and convince us, Mr. Sheehan? Instead of standing in front of a camera telling all these science fiction stories, why If alien-human hybrids are real, and you have seen evidence of this that would convince any jury, in America presumably, well, I could make a comment about that, couldn't I, really? But why are we not seeing that evidence? Why will they show it to Danny Sheehan but not to us? Can't be that secret, can it? Penalty of death if you show it to anyone. It's been shown to Danny Sheehan. Complete and utter codswallop, as usual. The Phoenix Lights, someone was regurgitating the Phoenix Lights. You know, all these people who saw a huge boomerang-shaped spacecraft slowly flying over the town can only present photographs of military flares. A few military flares hanging over a military test range. That's all we see. We don't see one photograph of a big boomerang-sized spacecraft, big as a football field, flying over the town. We don't see that at all. Put a line through the Phoenix Lights. Complete and utter rubbish without actual tangible evidence. You know, why do we only see military flares over a military test range as evidence of this big boomerang-shaped spacecraft? Complete and utter rubbish. Looks like the distributors have pulled out of James Fox's new film, The Program. Actually, it's very unusual. The wind is blowing from that way across me today. Normally it blows from that way, and there's something protecting me from the wind and the rain in that direction, but not in this direction. So I might get wet here, and I might not be able to read anything because my glasses will get covered in rain. So James Fox is saying he needs $200,000 to distribute the film. Now, personally, I wouldn't be spending any money on it. I think the distributors have realised that it's all science fiction, it's all a load of rubbish. They might have thought there was something to it at some point, but all these whistleblowers, all this coming forward, all this evidence, and it's fallen in a heap. It's just not there, is it? So I think the distributors, James Fox's distributors, have said, look, this is all science fiction rubbish. You know, if you've got some real tangible evidence, give us a call. Until then, we don't want to know anything about it. And I think that's what's happened with James Fox's film, The Program. It's got Jason Sands in it. That should tell you all you need to know. Was this 20 and back? You know, Lou Elizondo is telling us that he saw green orbs in his house, and so did other members of ATIP. I thought Lou Elizondo was the only member of ATIP, and that was a hobby program that he made up. It was completely unfunded. Is that right or wrong? And I saw one of the fanboys yesterday, one of the dyed-in-the-wool fanboys, saying Lou Elizondo is actually stepping back from these previous ATIP statements. Now he's saying, it wasn't a funded program; it was only a hobby program, and there was only a couple of people involved with it. You know, is that what it says in the book? You know, Stephen Greenstreet did a lot of research and looked into this. There was no funding for ATIP. People that ran ORSAP, that had the $22 million worth of funding, said ATIP was just an unfunded hobby program that Lou Elizondo did in his spare time. So what other members of ATIP are there that are having green orbs appear in their houses? Anyone remember the TV series Chucky years ago? The kid had the green orb appearing in his bedroom. I'm sure Gary Nolan's a fan of that program. Gary Nolan. Sorry about that. That was very rude, sticking my tongue out. I'm not going to recut it. So, members of ATIP, Lou Elizondo says other members of ATIP had these glowing balls appear in their houses, almost as though the glowing balls were keeping their eye on members of ATIP, when there was no such thing as ATIP, no such thing as members of ATIP. In fact, I'm not going to read Elizondo's book unless someone sends me a copy for free. I'm not going to spend money on it. Although, to be fair, I do have the advanced copy that I got for review. That's Lou Elizondo's book there. the advanced copy I got for review. I still have that. I haven't read all of it, mainly because it's arse paper, isn't it? It's arse paper. But apparently in the book he's stepping back. So he might be being a little bit honest about ATIP. But Stephen Greenstreet did some digging around, and the New York Post Stephen Greenstreet posed some questions about ATIP. In response to questions about Elizondo's book, a Pentagon spokesperson told New York Post's Stephen Greenstreet, if I was wearing a hat, I'd take my hat off to Stephen Greenstreet. I think he does great work. So, a Pentagon spokesperson told New York Post Stephen Greenstreet ATIP was an unofficial, unrecognised program that had no dedicated personnel or budget, and that Elizondo had no assigned responsibilities for ORSAP ATIP whilst assigned to the office of the Undersecretary of Defence for Intelligence, the OUSDI. So that's a spokesperson from the Pentagon told Stephen Greenstreet, who's a New York Post investigative journalist, unlike Ross Coulthard, who seems to be the sort of investigative journalist that investigates and doesn't tell you anything. Mr. Greenstreet investigates and tells us what he finds. And what he's found is that ATIP was an unofficial, unrecognised program that had no dedicated personnel or budget, that Elizondo had no assigned responsibilities for ORSAP ATIP while assigned to the Office of the Undersecretary of Defence for Intelligence, the OUSDI. So, as a Pentagon spokesman has put this out there, and they've told Stephen Greenstreet that, and I'm sure Stephen Greenstreet wasted no time whatsoever making that super public. I think maybe that's why Lou Elizondo backpedaled on ATIP. And it may be why the book was delayed. I don't know what the date of this is, but he might have thought, oh, what am I going to do? You know, I've put all this bullshit in the book. You know, it's going to be out in a public, credible source, from a credible source, that this is all bullshit, what I put in the book. So I better tone it down. And that was why the book was delayed. That's probably what happened. I suspect that's what happened. So his book was delayed while he could backpedal a bit on this ATIP business. So I haven't read it. Don't know what chapter it is, but I'll have a look at that. Certainly I do not believe people had green balls in their houses. Unless their kids are throwing cabbages around, you know, or melons, maybe. Go back to watching Chucky, guys. Chucky. Yeah, so... Yeah, so he's backpedaling rapidly. More trouble in paradise. Apparently Elizondo and Jay Stratton have fallen out. Stratton, you may recall, had something to do with the book about the Skinwalker Ranch, wasn't he? He was something to do with Allsat that actually had the $22 million worth of funding to go and investigate werewolves and ghosts and dino beavers at Skinwalker Ranch. Complete and utter nonsense, of course. Put a line through Skinwalker Ranch, absolute rubbish. People recognise a good thing when they're onto it, you know. So they're feeding the money man all this garbage that's you know, to keep the money coming into their coffers with their research at Skinwalker Ranch, just like they did with Bigelow. What was it? One of the guys said Bigelow didn't want to hear that nothing was going on, so they used to make stuff up and feed him a load of rubbish just to keep the money coming in. So, you know, Jay Stratton, wasn't he the guy that said that after a visit to Skinwalker Ranch, demons followed him home and they were running around his back garden? I mean, how much credibility can you really allocate? Is that the right word? How much credibility would you give these people? Personally, I give them 0. Any of them. Until you... The only person I think is credible is... Sean Kirkpatrick and the Arrow guys. They're the only people. I think are credible. The rest of it is all science fiction rubbish. Demons in the backyard and dino beavers. Really? See, all these UFO organisations that these people are involved with, Paradigm Institutes and all this sort of stuff, Soul Foundations, Shit Out of Luck Foundation, they're all not for profits. That means all the money you send them has to be gone by the end of the financial year. They can't have any money in the bank at the end of the financial year. They were not for profit. So if you send them $1 million between you, that $1 million has got to be divvied up by the people that run it. People are going to be getting 200 or 300 grand in their pocket. If they've got 4 people at the top, they're going to be getting 250 grand in their pocket each at the end of the year. For doing what exactly? Telling you a lot of science fiction crap. So I was watching this other guy. Who was this other guy? Preston Dennett. Reckons he's been abducted by aliens. He's been on the ship. And then he says, he's being interviewed, and he says, "Oh, have you heard about the JAL, the commercial airliner? They all saw it." The guy goes, "No, I haven't heard of that one, because he's not been looking into this very long. I've been looking into this since the 70s. Take my word for it, it's all bullshit. There is nothing to this." And he said, "No, I haven't heard of it." And he said, "Oh, yeah, it's a commercial airliner. They all saw it." In actual fact, the Alaska UFO thing, it was a cargo 747. There was only 3 people on it, 3 crew members. The captain was the only one that saw anything at all, and he had previously reported motherships buzzing his aircraft when he's been flying around. He had a history of reporting motherships buzzing his aircraft. The flight engineer and the co-pilot didn't see anything at all. So how credible is that? They say, "Oh yeah, it was primary radar return." Well, it was Alaska, the air's very cold. 747's a big plane, goes through the air, disturbs ice crystals in the atmosphere. Some clump together, they might clump together in a big enough clump that they'll return primary radar signals. Down to earth explanation for getting a radar return close to the freight 747. This is all embellished beyond all reason, all this rubbish. Do I believe Preston Dennett has been on board an alien spacecraft? Certainly not. Just that embellishment. They all do it. They won't give you the actual facts, because the actual facts will tell you there is nothing ET related to the stories they're telling. That's why they don't never do it. It's always embellished. It was a commercial airliner. Oh, they all saw it. No, they didn't. It was a cargo plane with 3 people on it, and 2 of them didn't see it. And the 3rd had a history of reporting motherships. Where's the credibility in that? I saw a UFO Witness. Awful program. As soon as I saw at the bottom of the screen, threat level. There's a bar, different colours, green, orange, red. Really nasty threat there. As soon as I saw threat level come up at the bottom of the screen, I thought, this is embellished dribble. And watched a few snippets of it. There was a woman on there that said she's had a few alien hybrids implanted into her, and they come and harvest them, but there's no medical records of any of this ever happening. Her going to the doctors saying, I've had an embryo removed. One of the first questions I would have asked her is, does she have kids here on Earth? Because it could be some sort of mental health aberration, someone desperately wants children but can't have them. Or it's just never happened. So they have to have hybrid children living out in the galaxy somewhere. It's some sort of, it sort of helps them mentally. Maybe that's what it's all about. What is not happening is people being impregnated. Human females being impregnated with alien sperm, presumably, to produce hybrid creatures. For a start, the aliens, if they have the technology to splice DNA, if that's what they've got, with us, you wouldn't need to gestate the fetus, the egg, the human egg, in a human female. You wouldn't need to do that. They would have the technology to gestate, they just harvest a few eggs. and they would gestate them in their lab. Don't you think that would make more sense? Then they don't have to keep coming back, seeing how she's doing, you know, removing the fetus. It's complete and utter crap. And when you look at it logically, there is no reason to engineer an alien hybrid species. It's the worst thing you could possibly do. You know, you get any kind of minority anywhere, you know, as soon as they've got the numbers, they're complaining and kicking and, you know, jumping up and down, they want this and they want that, you know. They'll be fighting everybody. They'll be fighting us, they'll be fighting them. It's ridiculous. It's like Gary Nolan with these ships, you know, the people that get on the ship don't necessarily have to be the people that get off the ships. You'd be generations on a ship. He's got no idea, no concept of what that would be like. You know, how many teenagers are not going to want to stay on the ship? There'll be riots on the ship. There'll be inbreeding, you know. It's complete and utter nonsense. A bit windy today. Yeah, so... yeah, I think that's about it, actually. I did see some other stuff, but this is just getting too pathetic for words. All this alien ET stuff, it's getting weaker and weaker and weaker, and the stories are getting more and more fanciful. Like I've said before, people are trying to put a few PSI into the ETs here balloon, you know, it keeps going. You know, I've been taken away on a flying saucer, you know, I've spoken to aliens. Have you got any evidence? Well, no. Complete and utter rubbish. And don't forget Lou Elizondo's book, Philip Corso 2, Arse Paper Special. As always, if you've struggled through the video all the way to this point, many thanks for watching, and maybe I'll catch you again.